Welcome to PixelTunesradio,
a podcast where we have fun
talking about video games
and video game music.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Ed.
And this is episode 95,
Remix!
Video Game Remix. We are going to be playing some awesome video game remixes from video game music bands, video game music remixers, techno, funk, all sorts of crazy stuff.
Absolutely. We're breaking form a little bit, I guess, this episode. You know, it's 95 episodes. It's about time we play something that isn't directly from video games, which we, try to do every episode. But I felt like, Mike and I both have huge collections of video game remixes and covers.
Very true.
Sitting on our hard drives, going back decades as far as my computer goes. So, it's a lot of stuff out there. I think maybe people who aren't as into VGM maybe haven't heard. These are stuff that I was really interested in kind of sharing out because they've meant a lot to me and how I kind of view video game music. And so, I assume it's very, very similar for you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird with video game music remixes because I kind of stopped downloading like a lot of video game remixes. I used to go on OC Remix like all the time. OC Remix, VG Mix, all those websites. And I would just, because at that point in time, YouTube didn't exist. This is back in when I was in college, like early 2000s.
I think the content back there was so minimal that it was kind of manageable.
Right.
You were able to, a couple new songs came out today. But then everybody started
remixing.
And it became
too big. Yeah.
Overwhelming.
Nope.
There are so many cool video game music remix tracks out there and so many awesome bands that
I couldn't keep up.
Tour and go to conventions. And so we'll be talking a lot about some of our favorite remixers and some of our favorite video game cover bands. And we'll provide links in our show notes. So if you guys appreciate or enjoy any of the songs that we play today, you can absolutely go out and check out, more of what these remixers and cover artists have done.
Yeah, it's really funny. Ever since we started the show, I really don't listen to video game remixes hardly ever.
I'm kind of the same. I've been focusing mainly on
original
VGM,
Right.
But, there's always room for kind of going outside that every once in a while. So that's why we're doing this.
Sometimes you feel like having a chicken sandwich, You're tired of hamburgers, you know? You're tired of that.
Right.
You just want a chicken sandwich, and now I'm really hungry.
And then you go back to those burgers for another 5 years.
Right, 5 years.
You want another chicken sandwich again. Oh, man. All right, so we got a little bit of top of the show business to get to. First off, I do want to give a heartfelt thanks to everyone who has given me their well wishes. Some of you may or may not know, I just lost my father recently. As of this recording, it's actually only 2 days ago. It's Sunday. He passed away on Friday. Just the outpouring of love on Facebook has been incredible, and I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone who chipped in for flowers for his services, and you guys are the best. So I just wanted to express that on the podcast, and thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Tough time for my family, but we're getting through it, and I'm kind of using this podcast to help keep myself occupied throughout the week, keep my mind off of the dark stuff and getting into the light stuff. So, speaking of that, we have some PixelChat questions. What's our first question today?
So our first question comes to us from Mr. Daniel Laughton, and he asks, if you could be director on any game sequel, what would it be and why?
This is a good question.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm just kind of thinking about it. I'm like, what game do I want to see a sequel to that really hasn't seen a sequel? I don't know.
I would almost say, you can look at it in terms of maybe a game series that's gone in a direction that you're not a fan
Happy
of.
with.
Being the director,
Sure.
you could send it in your direction.
That's true. I don't know. I'm torn.
So, Mike, I'll be Castlevania because I hate Lords of Shadow.
So, I was going to say Castlevania, but I'm kind of fine where things are with Castlevania in the sense that, Bloodstained is on its way.
True.
We've still got that potential for a Castlevania-ish type of game.
Yeah.
We may never ever see the Belmonts rise up again, but I feel like the book is closed. The chapter is done.
Yeah.
And what we have is some fantastic Castlevania games, aside from Lords of Shadow. But I'm going to say Mega Man, actually, because I've been doing the streams of the Mega Man games on my YouTube channel, and one of the episodes, I think it was maybe Mega Man 5 when we were streaming that, we started talking about like all the different names for bosses and stuff, and like conceptualizing all these different bosses, and we came up with some really, really fun, awesome bosses. I think my favorite was Dunkman, and it was like a basketball themed that would be
great. Cool.
That would be really cool. So yeah, stuff like I just have so many ideas, and I know how Mega Man works. Like I know the feel and the look and everything. So I'm gonna say Mega Man.
Awesome.
Like classic Mega Man series. I want to produce and direct Mega Man 11 through 1 million. That's right.
Wow, that's a lot of Mega
1
Man.
1 million.
Yeah. You think it wouldn't get stale by then?
Nah.
We'd start having
Jump and shoot.
Lettuce Man and just
Charcoal
we're
Man.
Completely out of ideas. Speck of Dust Man. Other Speck of Dust Man.
Batman. Just DC combined.
Yeah, so it'll just be a baseball bat.
Yeah.
Just to get around the copyright.
Yes.
For me, I would like to bring back and direct a sequel to the Driver series.
Okay.
Those games just don't get the love they deserve. And the last Driver, while it was really good, had so much potential. You know, it had a full city, but you couldn't get out of your car. You could like jump back and forth in between cars, like inhabit the bodies of the people driving the car. It kind of like jumped the shark in that respect, because
like Geist?
Spoilers. The concept is that the protagonist in the Driver series, Tanner, got knocked unconscious by one of his,
Tanner?
His name is Tanner. Why is that funny?
I'm just thinking of this...
Danny Tanner from Full House?
No, I was thinking of this skit from this comedian whose name escapes me right now, but he's really funny. It's a long story, but basically the long short of it is there's these super, super rich white kids, and they all have their names like Tanner, Connor, Skylar, that sort of thing.
Yeah, everything has an ER. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, the game kind of, it takes place, he's in a coma, so the game takes place in his mind. So it starts off kind of normally, except that then he realizes that he has the ability to jump into other cars so he can coordinate car chases. So he can be chasing somebody in a police car, but then jump to a fire truck that's down the street and block the road off.
Like physically jump, or mentally Geist?
Yeah, you press the triangle button and you see an overhead map, and then you can go around the overhead map, highlight a car, press the triangle button again, and then you're driving that car.
Okay.
It's a cool concept.
Yeah.
But from the story perspective, it got kind of and then as he got deeper into the coma, the game would become more surreal. It wasn't really what Driver was supposed to be. So I would
sci-fi Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, or psychological thriller Grand Theft Auto or something. So I feel like I would like to bring Driver back, find a way to kind of differentiate it from a lot of the open world games like Grand Theft Auto and Saints Row. Maybe focus a little bit more on the driving and the cars and less on the walking around and shooty, actiony stuff, but kind of bring that world to a little more life. And I think that would be a really cool concept to kind of reinvigorate that series, which I've loved since the first one came out.
Cool.
So, yeah, cool. Thank you for that question, Daniel. And let's move on to our next one. This one is from J.R. Smith, and he writes, first of all, love the show.
That's his question.
And we love you. And now the question. I have 5 kids. Wow. They listen to music as they go to sleep. The oldest, Keelik, has gotten bored of the CDs we have. He named his kid Keelik.
Keelik,
He's the man. Soul Calibur.
Soul Calibur, yeah, right.
He's my favorite Soul Calibur character.
Nice.
Can you please provide me with a song list, or at least a few selections of VGM to go to sleep by?
Ooh. I'd say almost any... You know what's a really good compilation is the Final Fantasy 5 and 6 disc compilation that came out with Final Fantasy Anthologies, I think it was. Whatever the one that was 5 and 6. Mm-hmm. That has a lot of really awesome music. There's not a lot of super crazy fast music, but it's all fairly quiet, and I used to fall asleep to that pretty regularly. So I would suggest that. That's if you can get the track listing for that, it's a really good listing of tracks that are just very easy going, very quiet, but also, just relaxing. So
cool.
But I could pretty much fall asleep to anything.
Even buzzsaws?
No, I've fallen asleep to Opeth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Sweet dreams.
Yeah.
So I would recommend Secret of Mana on the Super Nintendo. It has some great kind of acoustic and nice little fluty tracks that are great for sleeping too. There's a lot of the Mother 3 soundtrack, a lot of the songs where you're heading through caves, or if it's nighttime, there's some that's like ambient noise mixed with some very lighthearted music, which is very sleepy sounding.
Some of the Metroid stuff is really good to fall asleep to.
Nights into Dreams has some good stuff to fall asleep to.
Yeah.
And Emily from the VGM Jukebox actually has YouTube videos. She makes her own music boxes, and she does video game music tracks played on music box.
That's cool.
Which is very cool. So you might want to check that out too. Those are you can make MP3s using one of the online services and then play those. Those are great to fall asleep to as well.
That's cool.
You were going to say something? I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say Metroid.
Okay.
Some of the non-chiptune Metroid music, some of the stuff from Metroid Prime. Some of it is really bombastic, so I wouldn't recommend some of it. But if you kind of scour like Metroid Prime 1 through 3, Other M,
mixed in with Kenji Yamamoto's crazy like techno-industrial stuff.
Right.
There's a lot of kind of ambient and very sleepy sounding stuff.
Vendrana Drifts. We
played that on the show.
Yep.
Excellent.
Very good.
Very good.
Excellent question.
All right.
So the track that brought us in was Mega Man 2 Quick Man's theme, and it's remixed by Project X. Originally composed by Tateishi.
Yes, Project X is like this defunct outfit. Just two guys. I don't know their names. They never told anybody their names, but it was one of the first remix projects that I'd ever come across. I think the original tracks came out in 2002, and then they remastered them in 2012. They did one Mega Man 2 album and one Mega Man 3 album, and a lot of them are they're like rock with a little bit of electronics mixed in, but then like in that album is standing out as this Quick Man track, which is this like gorgeous acoustic, very kind of sleepy, This might even be good for J.R. Smith, for his kids to fall asleep to. But I always really love just how true they stayed to the melody of the Quick Man song, but made it sound completely different. What were your thoughts on this one?
This one was good. It's got kind of a like Spanish acoustic guitar
kind of vibe. Yeah, a little bit of like a flamenco kind of guitar
right.
style.
Yeah. No, I was digging it. I would say that a lot of the tracks that we're going to be listening to this episode stay fairly close to home.
Yeah. Those are my favorite kind of remixes. I don't like it when they stray too far from the source material.
It's interesting because most of the tracks that I picked are improved versions of the already existing tracks in my head. So when I play the games, like for example, we're going to play a track from a game that when I listen to those songs in the game, I'm in my head kind of like thinking that the song that's going to play is the remixed version.
That's funny.
Like it just kind of screws me up mentally.
Yeah, you're more used to the remix version.
Right,
so
exactly.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so
most of the tracks that we're going to play today are from games and songs that you probably already know pretty well.
Pretty common
composers
stuff
that we've already featured.
Yep.
So we're going to focus mainly on, the music itself and the remixers, and let's get into it.
All right, so our first track, this is my pick, it's Super Mario Bros. 2. This is Super Buck Jazz, and it's covered by Estradasphere, which I'm wondering if they named after Eric Estrada. I really hope so, because there needs to be something that exists called the Estradasphere.
That's funny.
This is on their album Buck Fever, and the track is originally composed by Koji Kondo.
Let's hit it.
Alright, welcome back. That little ditty was from Super Mario Bros. 2. The track is called Super Buck Jazz, and it's covered by Estradasphere on their album Buck Fever. This track was originally composed by Koji Kondo. It's the overworld theme from Mario 2.
It's fantastic. I feel like this is what Koji Kondo had in his head when he was composing the music, and obviously, you can't get that kind of a sound on an NES. So I feel like this is that music just brought to life. It's so true to form.
Oh, yeah.
I love that bass solo.
The upright bass?
Oh, it's fantastic.
So good.
And then over in the left channel, you kind of get the little hints of the melody just being played on a piano, just to kind of keep everything kind of flowing along.
Yeah.
But I felt like, this could be an authentic tune. You could walk into a speakeasy, in the 30s or 40s,
Yep.
and hear this playing, and it would not sound out of place at all.
Yeah, they did a great job with this track. I've been listening to this one for years, and it's always on my must-play list as far as like VGM remixes go.
Yeah.
It's great stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So how did you come across this one?
This was OC Remix.
Oh, okay.
Which you pointed out the other day. I used to call it OCR Remix, which is Overclocked Remix. Remix. So Estradasphere, they're an experimental band. They, I guess, formed from what they say is a bunch of different bizarre genres that they claim that they've created, called Bulgarian surf, Romanian gypsy metal, and spaghetti eastern, and also psychedelic sci-fi, gypsy metal jazz, and epic cinemathon. And that's according to their MySpace page.
So they like genre bending and blending and stuff like that.
Definitely.
That's cool. This one had a very kind of set, swing jazz genre.
Definitely.
But I'd like to hear some of their other stuff that kind of like goes outside of the realm of this.
Yeah, I mean, they started in the 90s, like the late 90s, and their last incarnation was based out of the Seattle area. They had 6 different instrumentalists that all did multiple different types of instruments, and all different types of musical backgrounds: classical music, jazz, heavy metal, which jazz is obviously in the forefront here in classical music as well. They were touring with some actually more popular artists like Amanda Palmer of the Dresden Dolls. They were also helping her produce a solo album that she put out called Who Killed Amanda Palmer.
Oh, cool.
The band is broken up or on a permanent hiatus as of 2010. But yeah, they have a lot of different influences. They've been compared to Mr. Bungle, Frank Zappa, and John Zorn.
Do they have any other remixes on Overclocked?
I believe they might. I believe that they have on that album maybe 1 or 2 other tracks that are remixes, but don't quote me on that because I haven't listened to the full album.
Cool.
Yeah.
So they don't do just video game music.
Right.
They do all sorts of
all different
stuff.
types of music. Yeah.
Really awesome. I'll have to check them out.
Very cool.
Cool.
What do you got for us?
Next up is a track called Hidden Around, and this is covered by ErichWK on his album Alberto effing Gonzalez from Smurf's Nightmare, originally composed, of course, by Alberto Jose Gonzalez. right, that was Hidden Around from Smurf's Nightmare, covered by ErichWK on his remix album Alberto effing Gonzalez, obviously composed by Alberto Jose Gonzalez. This is a Game Boy track, so it's updated for, real instruments. Again, it stays very, very true to the melody. I like how the instruments are all very upfront. It sounds like what a Game Boy arrangement would be, because everything is like the same volume in this track, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this definitely has like I know the game's called Smurf's Nightmare. I've only played it maybe like once.
Yeah.
But it has a Halloween vibe to it, this track.
This track, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little kind of a sneaky style
Yeah.
song to begin with, but which is funny because he also does on this album Baby Felix Halloween. He does a couple tracks off of that, so...
I've been trying to find that game ever since we played it. Impossible to find.
Really?
Yeah, I can't find it. I think I may have found it on Amazon, and it was only like $10 at the time, and I was like, oh, I'll go for it. It sounds like,
Did it come out over here? I don't even remember.
It did not.
Okay.
It was
so
Europe only, I think.
Yeah, but being Game Boy, it's multi-region.
Right.
So I remember that there's a group on Facebook that kind of deals with, chip tuners and video game music fans. And so ErichWK released this album, and he posted it on Facebook. And it was just kind of out of the blue. He never told anybody he was working on it. Mm-hmm. And so, suddenly everybody was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's just this 13-track epic of just awesome arranged and remixed Alberto Gonzalez songs. And Alberto Gonzalez himself was a member of the group, so he chimed in and he's like, dude, this is absolutely amazing. Like, thank you so much for
cool.
giving all this music attention. So that was really cool. A little bit about ErichWK. His real name is Eric Beckman. He's from La Jolla, California. He's a bassist, guitarist, and drummer in a pop-punk band. He's also in a ska band, and then he's also in a few video game cover music bands. He's in Kirby's Dream Band, where he plays the drums, Monstro Town, where he plays guitar and drums, Prime Legion, where he's the drummer, and Vic Viper, also the drummer. But he plays, on this particular album, he did the drums, guitar, bass, synths, the arrangement, the mixing, and the mastering. So, from fingers to the CD, it's all his work that you're hearing. He's got a Bandcamp you can check out. He's got a couple other tracks on there as well. He says on his Bandcamp that if he were to be asked who he believes the greatest video game composers of all time would be, Alberto Gonzalez would be one of the first names he would say. And he feels like a lot of people, when you say Alberto Gonzalez, they say, who? And so he wanted to kind of prove to his friends and to other listeners that his music is absolutely incredible, and that that he could get his name out there and hopefully get some more recognition for a lot of his music. This album was released in January of 2015. It's still up on Bandcamp. You can go download it. It's a free download. You don't have to pay anything for it at all. It's 13 tracks of amazing music, so go check it out.
Nice. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So, what do we got next? It's my turn, so we're going to go with Guilty Gear X2. The track is Momentary Life, Baiken's theme, and it is covered by S.S.H, originally composed by Daisuke Ishiwatari. All right, welcome back. Hope your necks are okay from that one. Guilty Gear X2, Momentary Life Baiken's theme, and that was covered by S.S.H, originally composed by Daisuke Ishiwatari.
This one takes you on a trip.
Yeah.
Out to space. And then kind of shakes you around a bit and drops you back off on Earth.
Yeah, pretty much. This is one of the first tracks by S.S.H that I ever heard. For those who don't know who he is, S.S.H is also known as Saitama Saishu Haiki. He's a Japanese musician, and he, I guess, is kind of like a master of all trades. He mostly does like video game music as far as remixes and covers. Some of his more popular ones are like Thunder Force, Tales of Fantasia, Super Robot Wars, some of the Megami Tensei games, Ragnarok Online, and Unreal Tournament. He's also considered a doujin artist. I guess he also draws. I don't know. I don't really know.
No. Doujin can be anything. So doujin just means that it's a fan game. So you can be a composer for a doujin game.
Okay.
A doujin game just means it's a game that exists in an IP's world, but isn't necessarily authorized by that.
I thought that was weird because I've always affiliated the word doujin to like manga.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah,
like
those are just fan comics. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that's where the concept comes
That makes sense.
from. Now our audience knows.
Yay! So yeah, he did soundtracks to actually on real games like Lost Child 69-2. He also made official arrangements for the Atelier series, which is really cool. So typically uses like guitar, like synth guitar, symphonic elements are kind of scattered throughout. One of his main inspirations is my favorite band of all time, Iron Maiden. And if you listen to his medley of the Castlevania songs that he did, I believe it's called Akamajo Dracula The Quest, and that features at around the 5-minute mark, it jumps into Iron Maiden's The Trooper. In another cover song for Ys 4, The Dawn of Ys, he rearranges the song with Iron Maiden's The Evil That Men Do. So
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, right up my alley. So.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, no, I love the track. It gives a great energy. This is one of the tracks that I had mentioned earlier that when I play Guilty Gear X2 or when I play any Guilty Gear game where I can play Momentary Life, like through choosing the tracks, like in the newest version of Guilty Gear Rev 2, you can sort of like purchase with in-game money like old tracks from Guilty Gear X2.
Okay.
And then you can like change the tracks around to fit, what you want to listen to. So when I do change to Baiken's theme, which Baiken's probably my favorite character in the series, when you're playing this area, you hear the theme, and this version of the theme, the octaves are just so much higher.
Yeah.
And so much, there's just so much craziness going on.
Yeah, it was really hard. I mean, I originally thought that it was actual guitar lead. And it's funny because a lot of the solos start off, you're like, oh yeah, real guitar. And then as it ends, there are some staccato notes like towards the end of the solos. Then you're like, wait a second, that sounds like keyboard. And then I'm like, no, wait, that's guitar.
Yeah.
No, wait, that's keyboard. Go back and forth.
Probably just synth guitar.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what it is. But the tone is really kind of like crisp and crunchy and very overdriven.
Yeah.
It's kind of a tone that you don't really get with a guitar so much, that's why I was kind of like starting to think that it was synth. I love like the shamisen going along with the rhythm guitar. Like I love that sound from like Bushido Blade 2.
Good. Yep.
That brought me back to like Ryuji Sasai's compositions from Bushido Blade 2. Just a very good track. I remember the original track, and I do absolutely prefer this one. It just has so much more energy. It feels like
faster.
A fighting game track. You know, it's just really awesome stuff.
Yeah, it sucks because nothing to take away from Daisuke Ishiwatari. His track is great.
Yeah.
All the music that he did for Guilty Gear is great, but when you hear it through the S.S.H filter, you're just like, oh, I like want that to be the music. But I think it's good stuff.
We'll have to see if somebody can hack the game and put in a custom soundtrack.
All right, what do you got for us?
Next up is, one of everybody's favorite locations and one of everybody's favorite video games. This one is called Killer Seaweed from the original TMNT game on the NES. This one's remixed by Blind, originally composed by Jun Funahashi. And we're back. That was Killer Seaweed remixed by Blind from the original NES track off of the original TMNT game, originally composed by Jun Funahashi. How many times can I say original in a sentence?
That's true.
I think I just broke the record.
Original.
So I like this track. It's probably not really in your wheelhouse, I don't think.
Not so much. I mean, I dug it. I thought it was actually pretty good. I like, for the most part, anything by Blind. I think Blind does great work. Yeah, I kind of dig the dubsteppy kind of vibe that was kind of coming in.
It works very well with the melody in this song.
Yeah, there's a remix that is another like dubstep heavy one. It's like a Lost Woods remix from Ocarina of Time. I think it's called like Crisley or something remixed. That one, it reminded me a lot of that. It's got those like really kind of like dubsteppy moments.
Very textured
grindy
synths.
Kind of. Yeah.
It's got some good stuff, and I like that he doesn't get into the second part of the melody until like 2 minutes in. So every time I'm hearing that first part, I'm like, all right, now I'm gonna get the dun 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 dun, and it never. And then I'm just waiting, and finally he brings it in, and it sounds really good. And then he kind of goes back away from it for a while and comes back in and adds new different parts. He's got that really grindy bass that comes in like around the 3-minute part. Reminds me a lot of like the Danny Baranowski stuff from like the Necro Dancer.
Yes,
it sounds very much like him. So he kind of mixes these different elements of techno in and out with the music. And it always feels like you have that nostalgic feeling from the original Nintendo track there, so we never really strayed from it too much.
Definitely reinvigorates the track
for sure
for a more modern audience.
Yeah, and I think this is a true remix too. I think he actually took the melody from the NES, like sampled from the NES, and then kind of just processed the sound for that lead melody there.
Kind of has an underwater vibe to it too.
For sure. Well, and it takes place underwater in the game.
True.
So
that's true.
It's like a little gurgly sound. So Blind's real name is Jordan Stephen Aguirre, aka Jordan Stephen when he does orchestral arrangements. He's from Las Vegas, Nevada. He's a long-time OC Remix contributor. He can be found on Game Chops as well. As a matter of fact, as we were listening to the track, Mike and I, my email pinged, and it was an email from Game Chops, and it was DJ Cutman saying, hey, here's a new track from Blind. So that's really funny. He was just featured on the new Zelda remix album they put out called Mirror Image. So he's got a house dance track covering Naryu's hymn.
Okay.
So that's his brand new track. Just came out today. So Blind is obviously still doing remixes and stuff. But he's been around for quite a while. His Bandcamp has a whole bunch of different albums, some VGM related, some not. He does original works too. He does stuff like Rasta techno, house, dubstep, breakbeat, you name a techno genre and he's pretty much worked with it before. He's also on the Gun Onion label, which also features Nickelpunk, which did the original theme song to Dude You Haven't Played This Game.
Yes, my boy Nickelpunk.
Which is pretty cool.
I feel like Gun Onion, I feel like they should have went with just Gunyon.
Gun Onion. Gunyon.
They should have just merged the two.
Gunyon.
Gunyon.
Yeah. Anyways, he has one game credit soundtrack to his name. He wrote the English game version soundtrack of the Lost Angelic Chronicles of Frayne, Dragon's Odyssey, which can be found on Steam and iOS. So I guess the game was developed in Japan. They had a Japanese soundtrack, and when they localized it and brought it over, they asked him to write the soundtrack to the English version of the game. So that's pretty cool. And like I said, he's still out there. He's most of his stuff comes out on Game Chops nowadays. So if you go to the Game Chops website, which we'll put a link to it in the show notes, you'll find all of his game related stuff. And then if you head to his Bandcamp, you'll find his orchestral and his techno and house original music. So definitely a remixer to check out, because there's a billion tracks you'll be able to find from him.
1 million billion.
1 million billion
trillion.
Gazillion. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our Mega Man block. We're going to start off with Mega Man X4. This is the Stage Select theme, and it is covered by DJ MetaZero, also known as Kenneth Hogg, and it's originally composed by Toshihiko Horiyama.
Mega great! Man, 95 episodes into PixelTunes Radio. We're certainly rounding the corner on that 100 episodes mark. And to think, when we started, we had no idea how long this would last.
You said it. Remember recording in your swanky Massachusetts-based Californian-themed VGM tavern? Ha, that was a hoot.
That's not us. Is your brain broken from headbanging again?
Nah, man, go with it. It's a commercial.
Oh. I was wondering when you were gonna fit one into this. So what's the catch?
Just play along.
Oh, okay. Why, yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, I was just hanging out with my favorite co-host of Pixelated Jukebox Rhythm Tunes Radio. It was I, Mr. Brian James Nichols, and you, Mrs. Emily Josh Purnell.
Why am I the woman in this scenario? Ow! Hey!
Stop ruining the magic, Emily.
Yeesh. I think you've had one too many salmon burgers. All right, take me down this weird remixed video game music podcast memory lane.
Well, I'm like the best at getting Japanese composers to jump on our show. Plus, I listen to everything from punk to funk to polka bump.
Polka bump?
Yeah, man. You're not doing the polka bump yet? You ain't bad. You ain't nothing.
Okay, so what? I'm the geeky dancing lady who tries to keep everything in check but plays way too much Pokemon Go and is abnormally tall with a big booming voice who picks all the sultry grooves?
Yeah, now you got it.
Awesome! We're Pixel Rhythm Tunes VGM-ated Jukebox Rhythm Radio.
No. It's Pixelated Jukebox Rhythm Tunes Radio.
Oh.
Plus, don't forget about our wacky talking jukebox friend, Haiku.
Oh, no, you mean Haju.
Oh, right, Kaiju.
No, Kaiju are monsters from Japanese movies like Godzilla. Dude, I think this remix has gone too far. Are you bleeding from the nose?
Huh, look at that. I guess I am. I think my brain fried itself from trying to keep all the names straight with this remix. You know, sometimes it's fun to mess around with someone else's material, but in this case, I think we should just get back to talking about video games and video game music.
You said it.
All right then, Emily, let's get back to the show.
But first, let's get you to a VGM hospital. Stat.
Welcome back. That was Mega Man X4, and that was the Stage Select theme. It was covered by DJ MetaZero, also known as Kenneth Haug? I don't know.
Hog. H-A-U-G.
Yeah.
Hog.
Originally composed by Toshihiko Horiyama. I love how he pretty much keeps this one by the books, but he adds these little flourishes that improve the track, in my opinion, that make it not as repetitive, because this is a very repetitive techno track.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of the commenters say on this on the remix page. I know see remix as well. But yeah, he does keep it a little more varied, so you don't get too bored of it. It's funny because that melody, or the main kind of arpeggio, that it reminds me so much of Wily's Castle from Mega Man 2.
Okay.
It's got the same kind of melody. So I keep wanting to hear that instead of this. So it's confusing my ears a little bit.
It's like half the notes have been ripped from it.
Yeah. But I mean, this is really simple, but for being released like way back in 2002, it feels very contemporary for its time, because back then a lot of the stuff that was coming out on OC Remix, you know, people were just kind of getting into this stuff, and a lot of these amateur composers didn't have all of that super awesome equipment and the VSTs and Cubase and stuff that everybody has access to now. So for this to be a little more simple, I think is completely acceptable. I think he did a really good job with a repetitive song and kind of spicing it up in ways that didn't vary too much from the original melody.
Back then, I mean, what we were seeing quite a bit of was a lot of remixes on OC Remix that were basically just the original songs, but like they would turn the reverb way up.
Right.
They would
slightly better instrument sets.
Yeah, like they would
MIDI with better sound fonts.
Literally just the NES, NSF file with like higher reverb, and then like, I don't know, drums done in like Fruity Loops. You know what I mean? that was pretty much what we were dealing with at that point.
It's funny
in time.
because I read an interview with Blind, and he said that's how he started. He originally started taking regular NES music and just putting beats over it, and then evolved from there. And I think a lot of remixers kind of did that too. I even did that for a little bit, here and there. Just as soon as I started using music editing software, I was like, let's take some video game music and put beats to it. I'm a remixer now.
Yeah, it wasn't until probably like DJ Pretzel and Protricity, Disco Dan, those were the guys that were like going like above and beyond.
Yeah,
and like I said, I'm super old school when it comes to VG remixes. Like I started listening to this stuff probably around like 2000, 2001, like right around the time when I was like first getting into college, like 2001. And so I would just spend hours and hours in my dorm room just downloading this stuff and blasting it. So it was good times. These tracks, I haven't listened to a lot of these tracks since I was in college, so it really kind of brings me back to that time.
Yeah, same with me. A lot of these songs I've been digging up, I haven't listened to in years.
Yeah.
And the next song that we're going to play is a great example of that. So this one is from Mega Man 2. It's the Bubble Man Soap and Water Mix, remixed by AE, originally composed by Takeshi Tateishi. right, that was the Bubble Man Soap and Water remix from AE from Mega Man 2, originally composed by Tateishi on the NES. So AE, like, way back in the day, dropped off like 5 stupendous Mega Man 2 remixes on OCR and then just disappeared. And I was like, do more stuff! Because he did Heat Man, Bubble Man, Metal Man, Quick Man, and Crash Man, I think were the 5 that he did. And they were all just phenomenal. I mean, you heard this song, so he takes these melodies and he makes them his own, but also stays true to the original, and his arrangements are just so good. Later on, I discovered that AE was actually Alex Esquivel, who's also known as A Rival. And so after I found that out, I was super happy, because then I went back and listened to all of A Rival's stuff. You know, he did the music for the Street Fighter Cross Mega Man series or game that came out. All those
fan
NES
game that
chiptune.
Capcom put out, right?
Right. So he did kind of combinations of Street Fighter and Mega Man music, and he's done a lot of other stuff as well. So I was really happy to find out that he's still successful and still kind of making a name for himself in the remix world.
There was an original version of this which came out. This is more like a retooled, redone version.
Exactly.
And I kind of feel like I like the original a little better. This one's a little too floaty for me. I don't know.
Okay.
It's not bad. It's not really my taste, I guess you could say. Whereas I think the original was a little bit more like, it was not as experimental, and it stayed truer to the original track.
Well, this one, basically what he did was he pumped up the bass a little bit on this one. He changed out one of the keyboard sounds with a little more of a house style keyboard.
Yeah.
And then that breakdown in the middle, or right, like 3/4 of the way through, it was kind of like a breakbeat style when he originally released it. And this one came out in 2013, so dubstep was coming in.
Sure.
So it was more of a glitchy dubstep-y kind of a breakdown before the ending. So I like them both. I don't know, the original ones, because they were released so long ago, they're not great quality music, and I feel like it would just degrade a lot when we finally put the podcast together and everything. This one is like really, really good quality. The bass sounds nice and strong. So, and I'm kind of new to it too, so I kind of want it to grow on me a little bit. So that's why I chose this one. We can also put a link to the original in the show notes or the Facebook group as well, so people can kind of listen to both and figure out which one they like the most. So like I said, AE's real name is Alex Esquivel. He's also known as Luke Esquivel, or Skill, or AE, which he released these songs under. He's from Santa Rosa, California, and he's also on Gun Onion Records. So Blind and Nickel Punk and everybody are with him. So in inclusion to that Street Fighter X Mega Man OST that we talked about, he did a whole bunch of remixes for Danny Baranowski's Crypt of the Necrodancer soundtrack. So you can unlock different versions of that soundtrack, like full versions of that soundtrack, and alternate remixes by lots of different chiptune and composers and stuff. So he did basically the entire Crypt of the Necrodancer album remixed from Baranowski's original compositions. So he's pretty successful. He's doing a lot of good stuff. He's got some production credits and stuff like that as well. So
I think he just played at Too Many Games, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think he played the final boss, like, post-dinner celebration.
Awesome.
Thingy.
I'd love to see him live. Great track. Go check out the other tracks that he released under the name AE on OC Remix, especially if you're fans of the original Mega Man 2 soundtrack. You'll find a lot of good stuff to listen to.
Agreed. All right, why don't we take to the skies? This one is Star Fox, and this is the track called Godspeed. And this is originally the Corneria theme, and it's covered by The Wingless, also known as John Burnett, and it's originally composed by Hajime Hirasawa.
Internal power to enable.
Enabled.
External power to disable.
Disabled.
Primary weapons to enable.
Enabled.
Secondary weapons to enable and prime.
Primed.
Astrogation systems to enable.
Enabled.
Life support to enable. Reflector shields to enable and prime. Targeting systems to enable.
Enabled.
Alpha interface to enable.
Enabled.
Laser interface to prime. Twin lasers to enable. Low bombs to prime. Arc rifle to enable. Range to prime. All systems prime.
All systems are good. Weapons primed and ready.
right, welcome back to Earth. That was Star Fox Godspeed. It was covered by The Wingless, also known as John Burnett. And it was originally composed by Hajime Hirasawa. And it's kind of like the Corneria theme mixed with the like main Star Fox introductory theme as well.
Intro/ending.
Yeah. It's good stuff. I mean, I really dig that pulsing bass more towards like when the track kind of kicks in. And then I also really like in the beginning when you've got those voices kind of like engaged, enabled, like, you know, kind of talking about all the little things. It makes you feel like it goes beyond a video game music track. It kind of makes you feel like you're in the game, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's mixed pretty well. You know, that for the I love the Corneria theme. I think it's probably the only track that I really enjoy from the Star Fox series. And I think one of the reasons I like it so much is because it kind of has like a traditional video game feel, but then also has those like chuggy like bass guitar samples, like dun 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 dun, and they totally rip that out in this track. And I feel like I want to hear it so badly, and it's not there. And I think it's kind of tainting my opinion of it. That rock feel. And they kind of made it sound like if the original Corneria track were arranged in the same way that a lot of the symphonic stuff in the space levels in the game would be. And that concept is cool, but I'm not a fan of those tracks and that style of music. So I do like the way it was produced. You know, it was really kind of like slows down in the middle and then goes into that Corneria theme. I mean, it kind of slows down in the middle and kind of goes into that Star Fox theme. I really like the way he did that, and I like the way he arranged the Star Fox theme. It
flows very well together. Like, you wouldn't even know that those are two separate tracks that were merged together.
Exactly.
So.
And I've heard heavier rock-style remixes of the original Corneria theme, and I really enjoy those much more than I think I would have, at least the beginning part of this. So this is kind of like an unbalanced, like the ending part, not so much the beginning part kind of feel for me.
I like the whole piece in total, but I'm always reminded of the beginning, and I always forget that there's that spacey kind of like out at sea kind of vibe that the track kind of flows into. Yeah. You've got those like, it almost sounds like birds cawing
a little bit
towards the end. And I almost
in the bathroom.
Yeah, it's Falco in the bathroom. Hey, you know. But in my head,
I got a bird turd here. What are you doing?
In my head, I'm kind of like imagining this track taking place in game, and this track was actually used for a reimagined intro, like a high definition reimagining of what the Star Fox intro for the first game would be if it was like a brand new game in high def.
That. Yes.
And so that's on YouTube. We'll post a link to it on the Facebook group. But that track, it has all that stuff like enabled, and they show you on the screen all the stuff getting checked off as far as, you know, what's happening with the ship getting ready. And then, you know, you get like this behind the R-Wing view of the 4 R-Wings taking off, and then it just kicks into that dun 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 dun.
Yep.
And like, it just, it's so uplifting, and it's a really well done like mix between like electronic elements and also like that more symphonic style that the Star Fox universe kind of, you know, has always stuck with for the later games. So this kind of reimagines the track as if it was a brand new Star Fox game, like, you know, Star Fox for, you know, Switch or something.
Yeah, a Star Fox remake.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's one of my more favorite like Star Fox remixes. Every time I think of a Star Fox remix, I think of this, because this is the very first one that kind of caught my attention. I have a bunch of others, and they're all like, you know, either like super hard rock or like super symphonic. So this kind of throws in those electronic elements, which surprisingly, I know you're probably thinking, you know, why are you of all people excited by that? But I do like some of that music, so I thought it was well done. The Wingless is also known as John Burnett, and he's been doing tracks on OC Remix since 2002. He later on took on like an administration type role, helping out with judging on tracks and like accepting tracks with the owner and proprietor, the founder, DJ Pretzel. He's been remixing from approximately 2002 to 2006, and his website's thewingless.com if you guys want to go check him out. He's working on a soundtrack currently for a game that's coming out called Shard, and he was featured on the Super Metroid Reserve Tank variations for OC Remix for the album, the arranged album. So good stuff. I think he's a very underrated remixer on OC Remix. Not a lot of people mention him when they mention OC Remix. So
Yeah.
thought I'd throw his track in just to kind of celebrate it.
Very cool.
All right, what's next?
All right, next up is The Attic's a Dungeon. This is from Mother 3. This is the 80s synth remix from My New Soundtrack, originally composed by Shogo Sakai. The Attic's a Dungeon, the 80s synth remix by My New Soundtrack, based on the track originally composed by Shogo Sakai from the game Mother 3.
I thought that was by Aha.
Seriously, right?
Take on Me.
You know, I absolutely love the Mother 3 soundtrack, and the only reason I haven't played very many tracks from that game on the show is because, I don't know, so many of the tracks, because there's so much music in it, and because the game takes you from place to place so quickly, you never stay in one place for very long. All of the tracks are like, they're pretty short. Like, they're less than 30 seconds for a loop. And on the whole, when you're listening to 200 of these pieces all together, the soundtrack on a whole is excellent. But individually, the songs don't seem to hold up as much. Especially like this song called The Attic's a Dungeon. The original track is more of like, it's kind of staccato. The bass is like this really super like bass solo-y concoction of madness. I know I played it for you, Mike, right? You got that kind of impression.
Oh, yeah.
It was like just bass solos and weird notes kind of stuck together. And then
I love the...
Yeah. And then so my new soundtrack, the remixer takes the song and kind of fleshes it out into this full, huge melody. And it starts off very true to the song, but then he kind of takes it in different places, keeps the chord progression sound, but adds in lots of cool parts that I think would have fit right at home in the game itself. You know, it didn't diverge too far from where the original song's idea came from. He uses fantastic set of 80s synth sounds, some great percussion with those little drum fills that go from the right to the left speaker. You stay very true to like 80s music.
Right.
So what was your opinion on this one?
Oh, I liked it. I liked it a lot. I'm kind of a sucker for anything like 80s synthwave type stuff. It's all so good. So I was really digging the main melody, and then they kind of threw in like a octave change in there, like a harmonized octave change, which really kind of like made me, definitely appreciate the song even more. And, after listening to the original track, which I had never heard, so we listened to that first, and then, playing it back to back, I like the original quite a bit, but this song just sounds, as you said, more fleshed out. There's a lot more going on
a little
behind
bit richer.
It. Yeah.
The Game Boy Advance hardware just sucked in terms of sound, so... Shogo Sakai did the best he could with that soundtrack and made it sound really good, but it still sounds a little anemic at times because, you just have those no bad bass tones and lots of noisy fuzz that all of the sound kind of gets filtered through. So
I mean, it makes sense as to why Mother 3 came out on the Game Boy Advance, because you figure if you're transitioning from the NES Earthbound, like Mother Zero or whatever it's called.
Earthbound Beginnings.
Earthbound Beginnings. I think it's called Mother Zero, though.
Or it was just called
Zero.
Mother. No.
Earthbound Zero.
Well, Earthbound Zero was the fan translation.
Right, okay.
And then when Nintendo officially released the same game, they called it Earthbound Beginnings on
that's
the VC.
Right. Yep. And so, moving from that to the Super NES version of Earthbound, and then moving... originally they were going to release something on the 64DD, which was going to be Mother 3, but never happened.
Yeah.
So they released it on the Game Boy Advance, and, back in the day, a lot of companies were trying to make Super NES-style games on the Game Boy Advance. So it's a nice transition, and I always thought that, kind of fits. I can't imagine what a 3D Mother game would look like, or Earthbound game would look like.
I think on the 64 it just would have lost a lot of what the Game Boy Advance was able to bring.
Yeah, a lot of charm would probably go by the wayside.
And the soundtrack, it wouldn't have been as good. I think even though the Game Boy Advance soundtrack, or the Game Boy Advance sound hardware isn't great, because it has its own separate sound hardware, you can fit tons of music, you can fit tons of different sounds, and the N64, because it has to use the same processor, they wouldn't have been able to do as much with it.
Would have went two different ways. It would have either been fewer tracks, but longer tracks.
Maybe, yeah.
Or, like, less tracks, but they would still be short. Like 30-second to a minute loops.
Right.
So
it wouldn't be a 6-hour-long soundtrack.
No,
like it is now.
Definitely not. No, but I think they could have gotten away with it. And especially on the 64DD. I mean, that was a disk drive-based game, so I believe that.
I don't remember them saying DD. You might be right, but I think it was just going to be a regular cartridge.
I thought it was going to be the 64DD, but I might be wrong about that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Way.
Yeah, either way, it was going to be on the N64.
Yeah. So I found this remix completely by accident. Most of these songs that I've picked are songs that I've been listening to since the early 2000s. But I was like, I wanted to play something for Mother 3. I kind of was looking through some Mother 3 remixes because I know there's a huge remix community out there that are fans of this game. And this was literally the first track that I came across on YouTube when I just looked up Mother 3 remix, and I just totally fell in love with it right off the bat. I'd never heard of my new soundtrack before, so I did a little research on him. His real name is Luis Ciez Garrido, and he's from Santiago, Chile, and he remixes for fun. He's basically, he's studying computer sciences full time, but, you know, at night when he's just bored, he just comes up with cool tracks and posts them on YouTube. He's got a Bandcamp and a SoundCloud. He's got tons and tons of music. He's one of those guys that just kind of like...
Always writing music. Always putting new stuff out. He's the Motoi Sakuraba of VGM remixes.
Yeah, for sure. And he'll do like different remixes of like, he'll do like a remix of an NES track but done in an FM style, or he'll do a Super NES track done in a Genesis style. He likes to kind of mix and match different sound sets and not necessarily make a complete conversion like you might hear on YouTube a lot, but he'll do a remix like this and add his own unique touch to it. So all of his music that I've heard has a really upbeat, fun feel. It's really good, feel-good, happy, like summer and springtime music. So definitely go check out my new soundtrack. I'll put some links, of course, in the show notes for everyone to check them out.
Sounds good.
Yes.
All right, let's get crunchy. This is Metroid Ridley's theme, and this is covered by Metroid Metal. This is off of their Various Sweet album, and it's originally composed by Hirokazu Hip Tanaka. Alright, welcome back. That was Metroid Ridley's theme, and that was covered by Metroid Metal on their Various Sweet album. And that was originally composed by Hirokazu Hip Tanaka.
Kind of schizophrenic.
It is awesome. It just bleeds epic and awesome. It really enunciates that like harmonized like guitar noodling that's going on in Ridley's theme. Yeah, and you know, I could never envision this track in any other way, shape, or form other than the original and this. That's it. So Metroid Metal, they take a lot of influence from lots of different metal bands. Meshuggah is definitely one of them. This is very, very similar to a lot of the stuff that like early Meshuggah, like they're more like thrashy type stuff.
Yeah, no standard time signature.
Right,
just
exactly.
Yeah,
just all over the place. So Metroid Metal started off as an inspired group. It's like a one-man solo group project, and it was by Mr. Grant Henry. He's also known as Stemmage, and he's put out his own albums under the Stemmage name. He was inspired by Vomitron and the Mini Bosses, and you know, he kind of had this goal, which was, you know, pretty awesome to like go to the website. I believe it's metroidmetal.com, and I would go frequently after hearing, I think, either this track or the opening. I think it was the opening, title screen theme from Metroid. And he had a goal to release a metallic version of the original NES Metroid soundtrack. Like, literally every single song, even, like, the item pickup.
Yep, that's in there. Yep.
He did a metalized version of that, too, which is really cool. So, he got a lot of positive response from people like me. And, it was cool because I never looked at this project in terms of, like, a, back then sort of thing. That's what's really cool about a lot of this VG remix stuff that we're talking about today is it's all music that we heard not necessarily growing up, but we kind of heard as it was becoming a thing. And so it's not, a lot of the times we're looking back on it like, oh, I remember, around the time when this game came out, but now we're talking about, oh, I was there when this track was getting posted.
Yeah.
And I was like, the person that was like leaving positive comments like, this is awesome, like do more like this. So that was,
and now it's like one of the classics in the remix community. Yeah,
exactly. So after they got a lot of positive response, Stemage brought on bassist Dan Taylor, aka Chunk Style, and the two of them collaborated with a bunch of different stuff regarding like Metroid. Basically anything after the original like Metroid game that he did. So once he finished that project was done. Fans were like, dude, you gotta keep going. Like, keep it going.
Pick something else to do.
Yeah. So we started doing tracks from, like, Super Metroid. I think they did, like, Meridia or whatever, and that, I believe, was Chunk Style's first track.
Cool.
They did an ActRaiser medley called, like, Teddy's Bread.
Did they ever do Surface of SR388 for Metroid 2?
They might have. Yeah,
that would be really cool to hear.
I think they might have done that, yeah.
Stuff.
So later on, the duo brought in a co-collaborator on a previous project, drummer Kevin Lawrence, and then guitarist Dan Behrens, who some of you may know him by his name Danimal from Arm Cannon.
Danimal Cannon.
Yeah, Danimal Cannon, exactly. That's his solo project. And also Michael Molnar, who also goes by Kirby. And so all of them kind of came together to form Metroid Metal, the band. So this one-man solo project turned into this like huge, collaboration with all these artists. And, they've been to MagFest, they've toured, like, a bunch of different locations and places. They're, very well known, and rightly so. I think they're actually going to be putting out more music after Samus Returns comes out, because I saw some blog post, something about, like, hey, sorry, we've kind of been inactive. They have other projects going on. I think they have a Katamari Damacy theme.
Oh, yeah, I mean, all of their stuff are...
Yeah.
All of their members are all doing multiple projects of their own,
yes,
so I can imagine that getting together to do this would not be easy all the time.
Right. So I know Grant is a huge Metroid fan. I actually interviewed him when Video Games Live came to town here, local in New Haven.
Oh, okay.
And I was interning at the New Haven Advocate at the time. And it was my very first cover story, actually, was Video Games Live. They did like a full like cover story thing on it. It was really cool. So I was like, who am I going to interview? So I interviewed actually Tommy Tallarico and also Grant Henry. So it's pretty cool.
Very neat.
Yeah. So let's move on. Now, this is weird. You're picking a track that I would probably pick.
Well, I love this track. This is Vampire Snap 2, Vampire Killer. From Castlevania 2, remixed by Joshua Morse off of his EP called Vlad. Originally composed by Kenichi Matsubara, Satoe Terashima, and Koji Maruta. And we're back. That was Vampire Snap 2, a remix track from Vampire Killer, remixed by Joshua Morse. Of course, the original was composed by Kenichi Matsubara, Satoe Terashima, and Koji Murata.
Oh, snap.
Oh, snap.
Oh, snap.
This is off of the EP called Vlad. He also followed it up with a sequel called Vlad 2. Both are, I think, 4 or 5 tracks apiece. And it was really hard for me to choose just one from those collections of both Vlad EPs. I love this remix. I love how he just takes that original melody and changes it up and adds like little elements of like jazz and little elements of dubstep and some rock and how it gets really, really aggressive at the end just before it fades out. Production quality on this track is just absurd.
Yeah,
he's done so much good stuff with it.
So clean and crisp sounding. It's really very well done. Joshua Morse has done so much good stuff too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I've disliked a single track that I've ever heard of his.
No, I mean, he just picks stuff and he picks titles that are fantastic tunes to begin with, and then he just makes them better. Like, you know,
his original stuff too is fantastic.
Oh yeah. And again, like he has a jazz background and he's got music theory background. So, but he's also got that aesthetic that he likes. You know, being a producer of modern dance and electronic music too, so he combines the two into ways that most people wouldn't even think about. So, you know, taking like techno stuff where it's just, you know, beats and you don't really see like a lot of music theory go into like modern dance and techno music, but when you combine the two, you get some really awesome results. So, it's just good stuff. He's worth checking out. He is from Nashville, Tennessee. He's an experienced software engineer as well, so he makes his living off of developing software with open source technologies. I've heard that he's helped develop some sound engines for some indie games and stuff as well. So, you know, he's kind of one of those guys that we always talk about, like Chris Hulsbeck or Rob Hubbard or Yuzo Koshiro, where they are programmers as well as, you know, musicians and composers in their own right. So they know how the software works as well as how to compose music on it, which makes them be able to take advantage of all of the aspects of it. In addition to the large number of his albums available on Bandcamp, he's written a few game soundtracks for like A Wizard's Lizard, Lava Blade, Lunchbug, Onslaught, and Reed's Mind. And he's also done, you know, like you said, original tracks as well as remixes of stuff from like Castlevania, Mega Man, Zelda, you know, all the kind of like big franchises he's put his own kind of spin on. Definitely worth checking out. You know, we'll put links to his stuff in our notes.
The only criticism that I could give this track is I feel like that end part it's a bit repetitive to the point where it keeps going and it doesn't change enough to
see, I like that part.
Oh, really?
Where it's like very staccato.
I like it. I do like it, but I feel like it goes on for maybe like, I don't know, 2 extra measures more than it should.
Fair enough.
But overall,
that's
really
small criticism. So it's not that big
totally.
Of a deal.
It's like, I don't know. It's the only, you know, critique that I can
right.
give
If you have to nitpick, then that means that it's really good to be
Exactly. So, no, great stuff.
Awesome.
So let's move on to a track that you pretty much can't find anywhere. This is a track that was originally on VG Mix.
Can't even find it on this podcast.
Yeah.
4 minutes of silence.
4 minutes of silence. This is from Final Fantasy VII. The track is called Antitrust, and it's covered by Substin. The track originally is called Shinra Company, composed by Nobuo Uematsu. Welcome back. That grindy mess was Final Fantasy VII Antitrust. It was covered by Substan, and originally it was Shinra Company, composed by Nobuo Uematsu. I don't know, I'm curious. What did you think of this one?
I thought it was cool. I thought it reminded me a lot of like the Year Zero album from Nine Inch Nails. A lot of the stuff on there is very glitchy, grindy beats with, softer melodies in the background, kind of similar to this one. Mm-hmm. I'm familiar with the source material, not as much as most people into Final Fantasy are, I guess, but I did recognize the original song in there, like sitting in the background. I thought that the percussion really took a front seat in this particular track. And I thought it was cool. I mean, I really like this kind of music, so I had a good time listening to it. I felt like it would have been, if this track had been in the game in place of the original song, it would have given Shinra a much more sinister kind of... it would have given the game away, so to speak, and the plot much quicker than it did in Final Fantasy VII. You would have known they were up to no good.
No, I agree.
To begin with.
Yeah, this track is just phenomenal. This is one of my favorite video game music remixes pretty much of all time. I love those just like thick, just stomping bass kicks, like boom, boom, boom. And then you've got those like twitchy kind of glitchy sounds that kind of come in, fade out. And as the track is going on, you've got these awesome like symphonic sweeping melodies that come in and come out. It's just fantastic. It's really good stuff. And then at the end is just such a like wave of, it's like a crescendo wave of just techno organic like messiness. It's just it's brilliant. It's really for me to like a track like this is very rare, but I do really dig this. It's right up my alley.
Tracks like this usually take me a couple of listens to really start to appreciate fully, because there's so much complexity in the drums, and like you don't always hear that the first time you listen to it. It just sounds like unorganized noise, but when you start listening to it more and more, you start to see those patterns, and I really like doing that. So, as I'm putting the show together before we release the podcast, I'm sure by the time the podcast is out in like a week and a half, I'm going to be like, yes, this is one of my favorite of all time. I'm sure that's going to happen at some point. So, very, very cool. So you don't really know much about this remixer, right?
I couldn't find really anything on Substan. It's Substn with an uppercase N. So
I searched around the net and I couldn't find anything either.
Yeah.
It's weird.
He did a bunch of tracks on VGMix back when that was out in its heyday, but the track is no longer available on even the archives that VGMix has up right now.
There were a couple tracks from him on YouTube, not posted by him, but people that have just dug up his stuff and posted it on the web.
Yeah. But I don't know. I may post this on like YouTube just to. Maybe I'll just create
then definitely
just to create a temporary account just to throw this up there, because I feel like this is one of those tracks that I couldn't have possibly been the only person that heard this track that was blown away by it, that like downloaded it immediately and then kind of like let it sit kind of grumbling in their in their video game music folder, and then all of a sudden just as soon as we started talking about doing this episode, I was like, I have to include this track. Yeah. So I had to sift through all my music and dig up the track and find it, and I was very happy that I did. So I'm glad that I could share it with everybody.
Very cool, very cool.
So what do you got for our closing number?
Closing number you've either heard before and you're not going to mind hearing again, or you've never heard it before, which means that you need to hear it.
Yes.
This one's called Little Mac's Confession from the game Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, covered by Game Over. All right, we're back. That was Little Mac's Confession from the game Punch-Out, covered by Game Over, and that kind of makes me sad.
He just couldn't do it, man.
Just couldn't do it, man.
He couldn't do it.
He let Doc down.
Why did you have to do it?
This is like one of my all-time... I think this must have been one of my first video game remix / cover songs that I've ever heard. I think it was probably Mini Boss's first, because they were, I think, one of the first ever.
Right.
And then shortly after, I heard... My brother sent me this at some point, and I was like, this is really awesome, because it not only, was a great cover musically of the Punch-Out song, but also kind of told the story of the game, or at least a version of the game where Little Mac isn't able to win the championship. Just great lyrics. They use the sound effects of the game in a way that makes sense in the music, with a little like woo 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 guitar slides.
Right.
The bell kind of counting in the song. It all just works so well.
It's perfect. It just everything fits in place where it should too. This is like one of, if I could say, it's a very iconic and very like perfect video game remix. It is exactly what it needs to be, and it does it so well.
Exactly.
So great stuff.
Yeah.
No, I dig it. This one I heard again, just like you, very similar to back in the day. This one I remember hearing like long after though I started listening to VGM remixes. Like I remember probably the first one that I talked about on last podcast was Protricity, and Disco Dan, all those types, DJ Pretzel, and it wasn't until maybe a year into discovering this music that this song came out, and I was like, oh, cool. And so I checked it out, and this reminds me, looking back on it reminds me of, it's probably very influential for Starbomb, that group that's comprised of like the Game Grumps guys and Ninja Sex Party guys.
Yep.
So, very similar to that in terms of tone and style. And, they clearly had fun with this track working on it. So tell me a little bit about these guys.
Well, Game Over was originally formed by Elizabeth Pesavanis in Sweden. So she's a guitarist.
Okay.
And she basically gathered people from all over the world. So I'm not sure whether it was necessarily the OC Remix forums or just game music forums in general.
Sure.
But I think there was one member from Germany, one from Sweden, one from Arizona in the USA. I don't remember where the other one was from. Basically, but they would all kind of remotely collaborate in making these tracks, which, this is a very tight song. It sounds like it was all recorded in a studio.
Oh, I agree.
Take.
Yeah.
So I guess not, though, but they patched it all together. There's been a couple different lineups, I think, since this original song was recorded, but originally it was Elizabeth, it was Dustin Schomer, Marcus Carlin, and man known just as Martin. But they all came together to make this really excellent track. They've got a few other remixes on OC Remix, including songs from Zelda, Mega Man, Castlevania. Again, like a lot of these remixers start off doing all of this very popular stuff, and then they kind of usually end up doing some more obscure stuff as they get more well-known.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
I haven't heard any of their other stuff.
Yeah, it's not as good. Like, this is the most iconic.
Sure.
The other ones are still in the same style, but I just think this one really kind of brings you into the game much more than the other ones do. You could still find them over at nintendometal.com, though they haven't been active in quite a while. If you go over to the Nintendo Metal Facebook page, Elizabeth still posts there every once in a while. She went to the last MagFest, and she's known as Wire, so she does original stuff, just like guitars with program drums and stuff under the name Wire, so you can check her out under that. Cool. She's a really good guitarist. This was 2002 that came out, and she was squealing and mealing away back then, so her guitar work's been pretty good.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of women back then for in the BGM scene either.
No.
So it's really cool to see people of all different types show up and rock out and produce some really awesome content. That's
Absolutely.
really cool.
Remixing is for everybody.
Agreed.
So that pretty much does it for our selections today.
Yeah. No, we had fun putting this together, and it was a super easy episode to get you guys.
And if you guys enjoyed it, let us know. Maybe we'll do some more remix episodes somewhere in the future.
Yeah.
We'd like to know which songs you heard, which songs were you familiar with already, which ones you want to check out. more from those artists, you can hit us up on all of our social media accounts, at PixelTunesRadio on Twitter, Facebook.com/groups/PixelTunesRadio on Facebook. You can check us out on YouTube.
YouTube.com/Dongold, and that's where you can check out PixelTunes Radio, PixelTunes Plays, Mike Tendell Plays, Dude You Haven't Played This Game, all the whole shebang that I do on that channel. So that's more of a way to watch the PixelTunes Radio episodes if you can't check them out on like a podcatcher or anything like that. But we are on like Stitcher, iTunes. Leave us a review if you like what you hear. Let us know. Or if you didn't like what you hear, let us know. Tell us what you think of the podcast.
Yes, and you can also just basically go to any RSS feed podcatcher, and our show should be there. If you're looking for our show in a podcast area and you can't find us, let us know. Email us at pixeltunesradio@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And we can get our show posted on there so you can get it on your feed of choice.
Also want to give a quick shout out to Pixel Stories. They're a podcast that a couple friends of ours do. One of the members is our good friend Brian, who has been on a few episodes of PixelTunes Radio. He's been on Dude You Haven't Played This Game. And he is doing a podcast called Pixel Stories. They recently had myself and my wife Patty on their episode, I think it was episode 9, Phoenix Wright. So you can check them out at pixelstories.net /podcast. That's the best way to get directly to the podcast itself to listen in. And, I'm sure we'll be featured on there again at some point. Maybe Ed and I can jump on, maybe do some. I think we talked to them about doing like some Castlevania, some Dynasty Warriors, all sorts of wacky stuff.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So check that out.
Awesome. And check out my other project, Impulse Project, at impulseproject.info. Now we've just released our giant 20th anniversary episode for the Evoke demo party, officially sponsored by the party itself. So that's like I said, a last episode, a full-length podcast. It's about an hour and 40 minutes or so. Cool. But we did all the first place winners from the last 20 years worth of Evoke. So you're going to hear some excellent chiptunes and Amiga-style tracks in that episode. So be sure to check that one out.
Super cool.
All right. So next episode is the long-awaited Tim Fallon Part 2. This will be we're doing. It's funny. Ended up being episode 69 was the original Tim Fallon episode, and now Volume 2 is going to be 96. So it's like yin and yang.
96, dude.
Right on. And this will be Tim Fallon selections that will be NES years on up to his eventual retirement from video game music. So might be a lot more familiar tracks from him in this coming episode than you were back in episode 69. But hopefully you'll learn a little bit about his later career as well. So we're looking forward to bringing that one to you.
Absolutely. All right, well, that's going to do it for our show. Again, thanks so much for listening to episode 95 of PixelTunes Radio, and we will see you on the flip side.
Peace out, guys.